Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let us discuss some important points about statistics in OBS and Gynae. First of all, the relative risk. We will discuss that how many times factor exposure would increase the incidence of an individual. Relative risk formula is that incidence risk among exposed group divided by incidence risk among non-exposed group. Okay, A divided by A plus B and C divided by C plus D. Attributable risk, how many times factor exposure would increase the incidence rate of a group. Okay, basically attributable risk is the same as the relative risk, but here instead of dividing it we just minus it. Okay, so incidence risk among exposed minus incidence risk among non-exposed, A divided by A plus B minus C divided by C plus D. Okay, odd ratio, you can see the formula of odd ratio is odds that a case was exposed, A divided by C, or that a control was exposed. So basically it is AD divided by BC. The coefficient of determination formula, correlation coefficient formula is this one, and a correlation study shows that there is a statistically significant positive correlation between body mass index and average blood loss at the time of cesarean section. Pearson's R is 0.4 and P is 0.01. How much of the variation in the blood loss can be calculated by BMI change, that is 16. Okay, basically the coefficient of determination R2 is the square of correlation coefficient. It represents the proportion of total variation in an dependent variable that is determined by or associated with independent variable. In this example, R2 is equal to, R2 means coefficient of determination is equal to 0.4 multiplied by 0.4, so we can say 16% of variation in the blood loss is calculated for by BMI. Okay, R is 0.4. okay, so we just take a square of it and that is 16%. What is 95% confidence interval? It represents the range in which the 95% of the mean values are present would lie if the sampling was repeated under the identical conditions. So if we know the standard of error, confidence interval can be calculated using the formula. 95% confidence is mean plus minus 1.6 multiplied by standard error. Okay, now maternal mortality ratio and rate. Okay, there is a difference between that. Maternal mortality ratio is number of maternal death in 12 months multiplied by 100,000 divided by number of live births in the same 12 months. And what is maternal mortality rate? That is number of maternal death in 12 months multiplied by 100,000 divided by average number of women in the reproductive age in the same 12 months. Okay, maternal mortality rate is the number of maternal death in a given period per population of women who are of reproductive age. Okay, so numerator would that be maternal death divided by women of reproductive age. Perinatal mortality rate is equal to fetal and early neonatal deaths divided by total births multiplied by 1000. And perinatal mortality ratio is fetal and early neonatal deaths divided by live birth multiplied by 1000. Perinatal mortality rate per 1000 total births, it is expressed as the sum number of stillbirths and early neonatal deaths less than 7 days of life per 1000 total births, stillbirths plus live birth. Okay, so perinatal mortality rate is equal to number of stillbirth plus number of early neonatal deaths in the year and locality divided by total births, stillbirth and live birth in the same year and locality multiplied by 1000. It is the best predictor of maternal and child health service. Okay, now denominator in the perinatal mortality rate is number of live births plus stillbirth. Okay, this is the formula of relative risk and attributable risk. I have explained it to you before. Perinatal death is basically fetal death plus neonatal death divided by 1000 live births. Sensitivity true positive divided by true positive plus false negative, specificity true negative divided by false positive plus true negative. Positive predictive value true positive divided by true positive plus false positive, negative predictive value true negative divided by false negative plus true negative. Now, false positive rate is equal to 1 minus specificity. So, false positive is equal to true negative plus false positive. True positive rate is equal to true positive plus true positive plus divided by true positive plus false negative. Now, false negative formula is that 1 minus sensitivity is equal to false negative true positive plus false negative. Okay, so that is another question which we put the values, but formula you have to remember. Okay, a 28 years old woman presents at 35 weeks of gestation in her second pregnancy, feeling with backache, fever, temperature 39, BP low, respiratory rate high, pulse high, spiral examination confirmed the false smelling vaginal discharge, lactate is high, and she is not responding to routine resistive measure. What is the risk of maternal mortality? So she has got the sepsis. Okay, so how much is the maternal mortality? That is 60%. Okay, multi-organ dysfunction with the maternal mortality in the region is 20 to 40%. Okay, the risk of mortality with multi-organ failure is 20 to 40%, but if we have septic shock along with it, it increases to 60%. Thank you so much. That was a little bit discussion on the